Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Before we start, please let's observe a moment of silence for every victims of racial injustice. Thank you. The world has not changed. Yes, we evolve, but the world has not changed. We live in a world in disguise. We see people getting shot. When we see Black people murdered on the street in daylight, it is as if we are still on. It is as if our life still has a tag. It is as if we are still chained. It is as if animals' life matter more than my life. I've never seen animals abused that were not reported or fought for. It is as if our lives matter less. And we all humans. And we all made of flesh and blood. And we all children, uncle, cousin, mom, father to someone. Don't we all come from a woman womb? Won't we all return to the ground? So why? Why? It is time to clearly say no. No to racial injustice, no to this injustice. Black lives matter. We matter. Thank you for listening. Welcome to our KENOSHA Intimate Conversation. I am Ingrid Shimano.
And I'm Kim Kawashima. Thank you all for being here today. Those of you who've joined us in the room, those watching live, and those of you who are watching one of our replays, thank you. 2 months ago, the world erupted after the death of George Floyd. Sadly, despite wide-scale uprising of people calling for change, things have not gotten better. George Floyd was not the first, and he was not the last. Again and again, we see news headlines that highlight the rift between law enforcement and the Black community. 7 days ago, we saw a man shot 7 times in the back at close range while his 3 sons watched. Jacob Blake may never walk again. His sons will never forget what they saw. We are not here to point fingers. We don't have the whole story, but we know that enough is enough. This needs to stop. Voices have risen. Anger and frustration have led to protests. Peaceful demonstrations end in more violence, and nothing changes. This is not the way. And so today we welcome you here to have an intimate conversation. We come together to share our thoughts and ideas on how we can not just move on, but do better and be better. We are here to mourn all those who have lost their lives to violence, to aggression, to the deep-rooted systemic inequalities. We are here to discuss the change that needs to happen as human beings, where differences of opinion are natural, but human decency, equality, and human rights need to be valued and are essential. And we're here to celebrate as we take steps to heal the world from the roots, dealing with the core problems and not just covering it with a bandage. Together we rise, and together we are strong.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to introduce our first guest, Isha. She's a wonderful, very passionate, and full of energy and grace. She's not just a person with great character. She's also a very talented singer and songwriter. Please, if you have any question for Isha, while she's speaking, enter it in the chat window and we will address them as time allows. Please, let's welcome Isha.
Hi, how are you guys?
We're great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me be a part of this. This is awesome. I know everything was so much hard work to put together, but you guys do amazing every time.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so much for joining us today. Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Princeton, New Jersey.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's awesome. I am also in New Jersey, so
Yay!
had a chance of meeting just because of COVID, but make sure to change that pretty soon.
Yes, definitely.
All right, I'm just going to go ahead and start very quick with our first question. I do know that you wrote a song called I Can't Breathe,
Mhm.
and this song was written in response to the recent racial injustice that are unfortunately happening today, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so what I want to know is that what was going through your mind when you were writing that song? Because it is full of passion and it definitely called out for change.
Yeah, well, it was definitely one of the hardest but most important and rewarding songs I've ever written because in general for me songwriting is very much how I process my emotions, how I process the things around me and world events. And also I had been on social media, the fact that we were in a pandemic and such a atrocity had happened and the only open line of communication was just Instagram posts or algorithm based, you know, social media. It can get to be a lot of noise. You kind of lose the heart of the issue, which is the fact that these are human beings, these are fathers, these are sons, these are people who we would have known and we would have loved and got their lives taken away too soon. So I really wanted to get to the heart of that issue and, write their story instead of trying to mask it as something other than just, this was a great person and their life was taken away. And yeah, that's what I tried to do. And I think I told their stories as best as I could. And hopefully, it spreads a good message.
I would say you did a brilliant job just listening to that song. It gives me goosebumps all the time.
Thank
So I'm
you.
gonna go ahead and put you on the spot right now. I
Mhm.
know that many of the audience haven't heard the song, so I would love if you can actually go ahead and sing the song for us today, like right now.
Mhm. Oh yeah, sure, sure. I'd love to. Yeah, this one is called I Can't Breathe. And yeah, I hope you can take something away from it.
Yeah.
I'm 19. I don't wanna die young. 23. Last words were to my mom. On a jog in a car, backyard of my own home. 22. It's not real, it can't be. 43. I didn't even do nothing. Send my love to family. Turns out freedom isn't free for everyone. How do I speak when I can't breathe? I can't. How do I stand when I can't breathe? I can't. All my life I had to lose just a name in the news. What about me? I can't breathe. I can't breathe. When I die, no, it's never black and white. We want change, but our throats are running dry. Seems so very ordinary. Write me off another story. How do I speak when I can't breathe? I can't. How do I stand when I can't breathe? I can't. All my life I had to lose just a name in the news. What about me? I can't breathe. I can't breathe. My skin is black. My blood is red. My streets are my skin is black, my blood is red, my streets are cold. Why don't you speak when I can't breathe? I can't. How do you sleep When I can't breathe, I can't. All my life I had to lose just a name in the news. What about me? How do I speak when I can't breathe? I can't. How do I stand when I can't breathe? I can't. All my life I had to lose just a name in the news. What about me? I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Isha.
Thank
Your songs, I love your songs because they're not just written from the heart. It's like they're written from your soul.
Oh
And
wow! Thank you so much. That means a
yeah,
lot.
so thank you. It's amazing. So, and I understand that you also have your sister Shravya joining us today, and I think she's you were saying that she helps you with your songs a little bit and we're really happy to bring you together today. She is in a separate room from you due to a quarantine period after a trip to Nashville. Is that right?
Yeah, I just came back a couple days back, so 14 days and I'll be good. We'll be in the
Yeah,
same room.
that's great. Quarantining in your own house.
Yes.
So Shravya, I'd like to hear from you now. As you watch the news around America and around the world every day, and you see the discord between law enforcement and the Black community, you see the protests, the riots, the upheaval. What are you feeling? I mean, you are the upcoming generation. You're the youth of America who have to inherit this country and this world in your future. So what do you think needs to be done and what do you think can be done to create a better future?
Yeah, I think like definitely living in this generation, I think there's a big responsibility to be better and to change. And at the same time, like as much as it does suck, like I know 2020 for a lot of people has been one of the worst years of their life in terms of like losing loved ones from COVID, having to kind of deal with this whole upheaval of like society as we know it and all these issues coming to light. But I think that's exactly what it is. It was something that was necessary, and it's definitely a negative like in the short term, but in the long term, if we don't have equality for everyone, then this country isn't truly free. And so in order to have a truly great America, we need to make sure that each and every citizen and member of our society is just being treated with the utmost respect from everyone around them. So I think as a young person, I feel definitely an obligation to take part. And of course, I think you were showing a video earlier about students in the classroom and just giving them opportunity to learn. And I think as a young person, like of course there is a kind of like a responsibility to change society, but also a responsibility to educate our youth on why exactly things are happening as they're happening. And I think events like this are so important to just spread the message of exactly what the issues are, because like Isha was saying earlier, it can get very detracted from the heart of the issue, and here it's just people. So I think definitely dealing with it is not as big of an issue in my sense because it's something that has to be dealt with. So for me, it's more of an obligation rather than some like thing that's a short-lived social media craze. This is a long-term, revolution that's happening, and we need to make sure that we're giving everything to make sure it happens faster. It'll happen eventually, but we want to make it happen as fast as possible and, save innocent lives. So that was kind of my reaction. But yeah, thanks for hosting this event. I think it's awesome, and it's an awesome opportunity for me to get to participate in it and for everyone to get to see it. So yeah, thank you again.
No, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Isha, can we have your thoughts on this? How do you see what's going on now?
Can you repeat the question?
So yeah, just as from the perspective of the young generation that is going to be inheriting this country and this world, what do you think needs to be done and can be done to build a better future?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. I feel like the number one thing that we're learning right now is to listen more than anything, because we're taught from such a young age, like history, and there's this invincibility complex and this feeling like, oh my God, you know, civil rights is over, like we've done it, it's over, I have friends, we're all diverse, we grew up together. But you have to listen and understand that even though you know these people and um, you know, your history, you don't have the same experiences, you don't have the same life, you know, outlook and paradigm, because we all grow up with different circumstances and different sets of rules that we have to follow. So I've had conversations with my Black friends about it because it's uncomfortable, but we have to be aware that, okay, it's uncomfortable for us for like 2 seconds, but for people, you know, who are dealing with police brutality, who are dealing with inequality every single day, our 2 minutes of uncomfortableness and cringing for feeling, you know, this is not my place. It is our place. We need to do better. We need to be understanding and listening and do our part to help. So I think that's the biggest thing, is I think younger generations are a lot more open, and we're a lot more willing to step outside ourselves and our own lives and, you know, listen and help other people.
Yes, in fact, Aisha, you're right. We really need to do better as a whole. That's very true. And
Mhm.
just from that, I'm going to move on to my next question. I do know that you are a student and you're also a music teacher. And I first want to go ahead and congratulate you on your achievements and your work ethics. You teach music to people from diverse backgrounds. And my question is, how have the recent events, basically COVID and the riot, have impacted your business as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so yeah, thank you for, you know, appreciating my achievements. Like that means a lot. Being a teacher is like so important to me. I feel like music is such a powerful tool. So, you know, my job in teaching is really important to me. I had a job as a singer-songwriter in general, so performing out, that has been more affected by it, I think, because live performances obviously are set back a little by COVID. But teaching, I've been teaching on Zoom, so I teach around like 10 kids every week on Zoom, and we'll, you know, practice how we usually do, but now they're just different sets of tools. So instead of, you know, having them right in front of me, I might like share a PDF with them, or, you know, I'll send them voice memos that they can listen to later. So we're definitely adapting to the times. I think music is one thing that you can never stop it. Even if you can't perform out, we'll find ways to, you know, like creep back in. So it's been good, rewarding in a different way.
All right, that's pretty awesome. How many years have you been a teacher, at least a music teacher?
Music teacher, I would say mm, like 6 years going on 7.
Wow, that's very impressive. I like you've been performing through many of our events. I just feel like I've got to know you, and I usually say this like, if I have money or the means, I'll produce you, and that comes from like from my heart, because you are an impactful person. Your songs are always well written, full of emotion and passions, and you're not afraid of coming out and speaking your mind and what you believe in, which I think it's a great attribute for a very young person. So congratulations on that again.
Thank you so much. I feel like I've got to know you guys too. Like,
The one thing that I do see is just that everybody is saying so beautiful, meaningful, amazing.
Amazing.
It's again, people are just complimenting your song. So we do appreciate you taking your time and coming up with us, and just performing such a great song for us. You did very well. Thank you so very much.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And so moving on, I would like to welcome our next featured guest. Nicole McGill Higgins is a race equality consultant based in the UK. She's also the Volunteering and Systems Officer and co-chair for Embrace Race at Work Social Impact and Innovation Team. Nicole expressed that she, like most of us, is saddened and fed up with the headlines that she's seeing day after day, and feels that there is a clear disconnect between the police and the community. So as a race equality specialist, we thought that she would be the perfect person to invite in today to give us her insights into what needs to change and how we can work toward more unification. If you have any questions for Nicole while she's speaking, please enter them in the chat, and we'll address them as time allows. So please welcome Nicole McGill Higgins.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes?
Yeah, okay, no, I'm just wondering because it keeps saying that I'm unstable. Not me, my internet. So thank you, Isha, that was powerful. Oh my gosh, that was really powerful. It gave me goosebumps as well. You need to release that. I wanted to record it, but I didn't know if I was allowed to, so I didn't. But
no, I think I'm actually planning on releasing that soon. That's so funny. It's coming out in like a week or so.
Excellent. No, it was a really, really good song. Well done. And when we first came in, we had, was it Jacob Blake's mom speaking? And
Yes.
Such a powerful message that she gave. And to think that she had to be in that situation because of the injustice towards her son, but still was able to be articulate, still able to look at humanity and to see that we are one race. And I think that's what's actually missing. I think there's too much segregation with that. And she said, you know, look at the color of your skin. She has beautiful brown skin, but everybody's skin is beautiful. And I think that's the message that's missing. There's somehow so much segregation in the way that people are speaking and thinking, oh, it's a black problem. Oh, it's a female problem. Oh, it's an LGBT problem. Oh, it's a disability problem. No, that person's not just disabled. You're not just black. You're not just female. You're human. And for me, especially in the UK, I haven't watched the George Floyd video. I just don't have the guts to do it. I think I've tried about 3 or 4 times and I've got to 5 seconds. And you have anger, you have compassion, you have fear. You know, you have all these things like, how do you do that for 8 minutes and 46 seconds looking at a camera, knowing that you're being filmed and you're taking someone's life away just because of the color of their skin? I think I said to Kim and Inrich beforehand, I'm quite light skinned. And when my white friends go on holiday, they come back darker than me. So color is literally skin deep. You know, what is this? So the way that I look at this and being invited to speak today is to talk about how can we change this? How can we have global unity? What tactics need to change? And there's a couple of things that I think, going back to education, I think Isha, you mentioned this, we need to know our history. I think in America, you're probably taught a little bit more about, they call it Black history, I call it world history, because it's not Black history. We were dragged along for the very uncomfortable ride, and I'm being extremely polite when I say uncomfortable. When you look at the slave trade, and our history didn't start with slavery, but let's talk about colonization. And if you look at the pattern of what happened, you know, we were kidnapped, raped, murdered, our identities were completely taken away. And for me, I think oppression and inequalities have evolved. They haven't changed much. For me, they've become legalized. You know, it's become almost law and it's protected by the law now, but not much has changed. And I think, Ingrid, you said that at the beginning of when you started talking, to say, yeah, we've evolved, but what change has really happened? Martin Luther King was marching for civil rights. Civil is hello, good morning, how are you? How can a whole race just be asked, can you just be civil? What's changed? Okay, we get the good mornings now, but then it's become more institutionalized. And the thing is, it is systemic. And to understand where that has come from, you need to go back to come forward. We need to understand, why is this happening? Why hasn't it changed? And what is that interception? You can't decode every single person. So things need to be made law, seriously law. If you run through a red light, you'll get points on your license. If you do it more than once, you have the potential of getting a fine or potentially going to prison. How can somebody be filmed being shot 7 times and you're put on administrative duties? If the shoe was on the other foot, they would have thrown the book at him. Why is the law so different when it comes to somebody of color? Why is that? And for me, it angers me and it saddens me. And I just think that people do need to wake up. And I think since George Floyd, my anger with the George Floyd scenario was that, why did it take such a brutal murder to happen in broad daylight for the world to wake up? this is the straw that broke the camel's back. And when you think that's such a cliche saying, but what that actually means is there was millions of straws before that, and this one broke the back. So it's not a George Floyd issue alone. So many other people have died in this manner, and in other ways too, because of the color of their skin globally. Lots of people around the world will say, oh, it's an American problem. No, it's a human problem. It's not an American problem. It's a global problem, because it's not black against white. It's everyone against racism and every form of racism. And for me, that's really, really important. We need to look at that and say, how do we dissect that? What do we do from an individual perspective? What do we do from an organizational perspective? What do we do from a government perspective? And what do we do from a global perspective? And it needs to stop. You know, the protests at the moment are being dubbed as terrorism. No, Martin Luther King famously said, protest is a language of the unheard. And unheard is the operative word there. If something keeps happening, you keep talking about it. Even if you're in a relationship, let's take it to a really basic level. If you keep speaking to your partner or your friends about something you don't like, until that changes, you keep talking about it. So what protests mean is that we haven't moved on from the Malcolm X's, from the Marcus Garveys, from the Martin Luther Kings. You know, what's happening is, to me, it's more sophisticated. This needs to stop. There needs to be a government intervention. There needs to be something that changes this. The protests, to me, are bigger than social media. Because if this didn't happen, if we didn't see this on social media, or if we didn't see the protests, we wouldn't be talking about it. So protests are important. No, they're not the only way. Do I believe in violence? No, I don't believe in the violence that's around it. But do I believe in protests? Yes, I do. Because it's people who are tired. We are a tired race. This is killing our well-being. It is so like, what do we do? There's a helplessness there. So we need to start lobbying. We need to have laws changed. We need to have more representation. We need to have access. We're not in the rooms where decisions are being made about our culture, around our race. Our culture is good for cultural appropriation, but it's not good enough for the people that it belongs to. We're not being listened to, and we're not having those rooms. We're not in the boardrooms. We're not in governments. We're not being influential. When we're being, what's the word? We're being blocked from that access, and access is important. I also look at the media, the language around the media. They say things. I saw a report. I don't know if it was CNN or or Sky. I can't remember if it was a UK media house or American one. But it was. It seems like Jacob didn't have a weapon. He did not have a weapon. It's not seemed like, oh, he was going into an SUV. He was going into his vehicle. It's really important that we call out what it is. I hardly ever say racism anymore. I say color hatred. My mom told me this. She said in the 60s it was called color hatred. It was turned into the word racism to be more middle class and more accepting, just like unconscious bias, just like these words that we're using that kind of makes things fluffy. No, we have to start saying what it is, using the correct language, saying what it is, not seems, not could be, not racism, not white privilege, white advantage. Not racism, it's you're hating somebody simply because of the color of their skin. So what do we do? How do we change this? How do we move on? The protests are happening, people are dying, people are angry. And the thing is, why isn't everybody angry? It shouldn't just be one set of people that's angry. This is injustice at its highest. And we're all seeing it. It's undeniable now. We have the internet. That, you know, Will Smith said it. Racism has always been there, just that now it's being recorded. This is nothing new for people, for Black people. We are used to this. I mean, what about the mothers who don't want their children to go out at the moment because they might get stopped and shot? It's absolutely categorically ridiculous. You know, it's a power game. And this is why it reminds me so much of slavery. When I saw the picture of George Floyd, I put a tweet and a LinkedIn post up, and it was a picture in 1816 of two white men had all the Black men lynched, basically, and they called it their Christmas tree, right? Because they were so happy that they have these, but they were taking over Zimbabwe at the time. And to me, it was modern day lynching. That's exactly what it was. That hasn't changed. So it goes back to evolving. Cars were made. Henry Ford made the cars. They don't look the same, but they have the same purpose. That's racism to me. That's color hatred to me. So what do we do? How do we change this? I don't particularly have the answers. And I'm sure all of us sit here and we think, what can we do? But there's small things you can do. You can sign petitions. You can lobby against things. You can like tweets and LinkedIn posts where people are fighting on the front line to try and get this changed. You can question your organizations. What are they doing about this? You can question the schools. You can question the legal system, the housing system. This doesn't just stop at the police and law enforcement. It runs through every single element of society. Black people are being marginalized and oppressed repeatedly, and that cannot be denied, and it should not be ignored. And that's just basically my stance on things at the moment, without becoming too emotional, without being too angry, because it's difficult not to be angry and not want to just almost scream. But what do? That feeling of helplessness. If I'm going to go on holiday, I check to see how much racist attacks has been there. Are there black people there? Should I have to think like that? No. But the thing is, you do have a lot of white people who are waking up. The Caucasian race is waking up too, and they are allies. But it's not just a matter of an ally because it sounds like, oh, let me help you guys over there. No, it's a global problem. We need to sort this together. So we need to hear what the issue is, and we need to try and dissect that. The Caucasian voice cannot be wiped out. That needs to be discussed. And the uncomfortable truths need to be discussed. The history, parts of our history are extremely horrid, extremely uncomfortable. However, it happened, and the effects of that are still happening, and that needs to be addressed, needs to be discussed. And we also need to find out what triggers you. If I say Black Lives Matter, why does that trigger you? And I think I put up another post that said, okay, if we say all lives matter, that's not a problem. If we say blue lives matter, that's not a problem. But if we say Black Lives Matter, that is a problem. So clearly matter's not a problem, but black is. Why? And that's the other thing. We can preach to the converted, because there's lots of people that think the way that I do or have similar thought processes. But the people who don't, why? Don't push it back on me and say, well, black people have an issue, they have a chip on their shoulder, oh, get over it. No, what is it that upsets you as a person? Why is it a problem? And until we start looking at ourselves, and I'm more talking to the Caucasian race who has an issue with Black Lives Matter, sorry, what is that trigger? What can you do differently? When you look at what TikTok Granny did, she literally just put a post out because she learned about the history of Tulsa. And when she realized what happened to Tulsa, black people were getting their own independence, making their own economy, having their own wealth. There's enough wealth in the world. Does it matter what color you are if you have it or not? But that seems to be a problem. We're shut down from everything. And it's not a sob story. It's not, oh, we're playing the victim. We are the ones who's being oppressed, and we're reacting to that. But then when we react, we're told we're the aggressors. That can't be right. And I think you said as well, Indrid, animals get treated better. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be humane to animals, but why are you not humane to any living thing? Why does that not exist? So for me, it's looking at what can you do differently as a person. Not everybody has the wherewithal to speak, to speak out publicly, but there are things you can do. There's enough petitions going around. There's the elections that are going around. There's people who are fighting this, that you can attend Zoom calls, you can like people's posts, you can speak to somebody of color and find out what is it. Have that conversation. At the end of the day, take it back to humanity. That's how I look at it. It's a human problem, and we need to be more humane and be kind. And when you think about Chadwick Boseman, who passed away over the weekend, and you're seeing all these reports now that he was losing weight because of his illness, and people were being so unkind to him, and he never said why he was ill. Can you imagine how those people feel now because they didn't think about just being kind? Why not? What's the problem with just saying, okay, so you are black, what's the problem with that? What's the issue? I still haven't heard why the issue is. I understand, I know my history very well, or the world history very well. I understand the Atlantic slave trade. I understand what all of that was about, but why has that still seeped into 2020? Why is that still here now? And we know that it's wrong. Wrong is wrong regardless. Color hatred is color hatred. Discrimination is wrong on every levels, but it just seems that the black race seems to be the race that just seems to have the really crap end of the stick all the time. Anti-blackness is just, to me, it's just something that people thrive in. And I just don't understand why you want to trample on a whole race. Even the word black sometimes upsets me. Why is a whole race looked upon as black when you look at the meaning of black? You know, we're taught every day there's these microaggressions that we deal with every single day, and we have to put on an armor and we have to fight this every single day. It's tiresome. We stand on the shoulders of giants who have fought this for 4, 5, 6, 700 years. We stand on their shoulders and we're still fighting. To me, when they started, the water was here. The water is just here. We still cannot breathe. And how do you have a voice, like you said, Isha, if you can't even breathe? You know, it's that, to me, that's it's really important. It's a really important topic for us to be talking about, and we need to get the nitty and gritty of it, good, bad, and ugly. So that's kind of my stance on how I see things, or my opinion.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So we have quite a number of questions coming up in the chat. The first one is from Alain, who is asking, you know, how can we get past the return of violence, and is there a way to find a common ground?
And when you say return of violence, are you talking from the protesters, or are you talking from law enforcement, or just the systemic racism that's there? Just to clarify so I can answer.
Alain, can you clarify that one?
I feel, yeah, on both sides. I feel like there's a return to violence, and I don't see it as effective on both sides. And like, to me, it's like, what's the end game? Like, how can we start? Because to me, the end game would be like, you know, civil war. And that's what I worry about. I'm complete.
Yeah, and I think to a large extent you're right there, because it's breaking point, because we've done the talking. We've tried to lobby things at law. We've tried to be the lesser race. When you think of all the things that have happened, you're right. It's almost like the only thing left is a civil war, and nobody wants that. And why? And the thing is that the power, we do not have the power. You know, the Caucasian race they're the dominant culture. It's as simple as that when it comes to power. People of color we're the global majority, but we don't have that power. So what do you do when you're saying to somebody, this is wrong, this needs to change, this is wrong, this needs to change, and there is no change? So yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, we don't want a race war. We don't want a civil war. When I say race war, I'm not talking black against white. I'm talking the world against racism. But something has to give, right?
Yes, if I could just say, something has to give. And, you know, I watch not Malcolm X, I watch Gandhi, I watch Martin Luther King, and I can't even imagine how you could sit and somebody, like, you know, pummel you, beat you. But I do see its effectiveness. And, you know, that's why I sit with, how can we get back to that? Because it's, to me, it's very, and I'm repeating myself, ineffective to be what we don't want to happen to us. I'm complete.
Oh, and the problem is that the unfortunate thing is that when you look at change, what has happened in the past, when you look at Rosa Parks, for example, and, you know, the boycott of the bus system for 18 months it took for them to stop taking the buses, that particular brand, right? 18 months. So sometimes it has to be something drastic. I'm not inciting violence in any way whatsoever, but in terms of what you're saying, it's almost like anybody who's in this world at the moment can see, well, nothing's working. George Floyd was murdered in June. Then you had a few, you know, there was murders in between that. And then you've got Jacob. It's like, how can you be in the middle of a global magnifying glass? There is a huge light on racial equality, and it's like you don't care. So what do you do next? And you do obviously have people in the community who are extremely angry. And as I said beforehand, of course, how can you not be angry? Because I still don't know why. What, because we're Black? There's nothing, you know, what? I don't understand. We have the same education. We don't have the same access to anything. Housing, jobs, nothing. Why? So when you have that level of you're back against the wall, what do? You come out fighting. And that's what we don't want. And that's why people need to stand up and show up and step up. It's not just about being anti-racist, it's about being actively anti-racist and having a voice. I've seen videos of where a lady was held down by the police in the UK here. The police, the shopkeeper called the cops on her. and people were just walking past, literally walking past. And her clothes were up, her skirt was too high. I would have had to at least pull her skirt down. It's about showing up and saying stuff when you hear it, call it out. Regardless if it's your manager, if it's your CEOs, if it's a shopkeeper, if it's a police, you have, and where you can, you sign petitions and you vote, and you lobby for things and you challenge your schools. We have to do it collectively. We have to unite. Otherwise, like you say, that there's a possibility that it could go to that level of violence, and then that's more bloodshed.
Yeah. So that brings me to another question that's here. It's from Sherry Brown, who makes the statement first that she loves the phrase color hatred to bring the true meaning to racism, and as well, I'd never heard that before, but it's so clear. It just, yeah. But her question is, how do companies and organizations bring or start these conversations and start writing on action steps within the companies if the leadership has not been open to them up to this point?
Right, so that's a really powerful question, and one I can answer. Simply because I'm the co-chair for the Race at Work network. I don't know if they have them in the States or in Canada or anywhere else, but you have staff networks, and really it's around the 9 protected characteristics. So you normally have the staff voices, so they're all voluntary, and you're kind of like the middle person between your HR department and your senior leaders and the staff. So what we have done is that the first thing we did was say that this is a conversation that needs to be had. And you normally would get a sponsor, so somebody who's either a head of department or somebody in the senior leadership team. We're quite fortunate because we have the CEO as our sponsor. So we have constant conversations, and it's a right for your organization or for your staff to have a voice, right? So say that your staff want to have a voice and we want to start a network. You could have a diversity and inclusion network, but ours is a race lens, and then we have the others for LGBT, disabilities, etc. And what we started to do, well, the first thing we did when we launched our staff network was we had a discussion with the whole organization, and we called it Let's Talk Race. And it wasn't compulsory to attend. We sent invites to the whole entire organization, the senior leadership team, everybody, and we had a really good turnout, and we had a panel discussion. So we got people in the organization so your staff feel a part of it. And we had questions. And we had people talking about lived experiences. We had people talking about, especially a lot of my Caucasian colleagues would say, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't know what to say. But it was a safe space. We created that space for conversations to be had. And that's what I would say is, firstly, see if there's a few people that would be willing to be a part of the group. And then say to your senior leadership, be brave, be strong, be bold, and say, we want to start having these conversations here. Because of everything that's happening, we can talk about COVID quite happily. We can talk about other global topics. We need to be talking about race in our organization, and see what they say. And when you say they're not open to it, question them and say, well, why not? And I would say, go into the conversations tool, know what you're talking about. Look at other organizations that are doing it, how successful it's been. Bring your facts to the table and ask for a meeting. So look at who the influencers are in your organization and say that we want to start talking about this. Your employees want to talk about this, and it's your right to have to be able to do that. So I would say, look, try and find a group of people, even if it's just 2 of you, or even if it's just you, and say, I would like to talk about this. Ask people in the organization to write blogs around it. How are they feeling? Because I don't know any race that isn't feeling it now. I don't know any race that isn't disgusted by what's happened. I don't know any race that's not wanting something to change. Of course, you've got people in every race that don't, but I think it's fair to say that not everybody is racist or has color hatred, and people want to make that change. So see if there's anyone in the organization who would support you, and put a small business proposal, a small business case together. Speak to your HR department and see what they're doing around diversity and inclusion and racial equality, and start that group. And it's not that you don't have to do something every week or even every month, but what our group does, we celebrate Diwali, we celebrate Ramadan, we celebrate Chinese New Year, we celebrate Black History Month, and we have these conversations. So there's lots that you can do with minimum amount of work per se, but get the organization involved. And or ask to do a survey and say, would you want to, or just ask a handful of people, Would you want to start a group? Would you want to be able to talk about these topics? You know, how has this affected you? How are you? How are you doing? Ask those questions, and that's taking it back to that human space. So I don't know if that's been helpful or not, but I'm happy offline to help or speak to you separately. But definitely, if it's something you're passionate about, hold your senior leadership team to account.
Yeah, that's great. She actually posted that was a good answer, and thank you. So just very quickly, just one last thing. I've been noticed there's actually a little conversation that has actually started within the chat. It started with the question of what sense of responsibility do we need from the Black protesters who vagabond properties and promote violent wordings? And then that was actually countered in the chat with a challenge that, you know, it's not just Black people vagabonding properties, and that there are white people dressed in Black garb doing it. There's also other non-Blacks doing it. And so it sort of led to the language is important, and that there's a difference between the protesters and those who are infiltrating the protests and doing the looting, and how the media is blending the two to create a negative perception of the protests. What can you say about that?
Well, my response or my question to that would be, why are we just speaking about the protesters? What's the problem? Why are the protesters even out there? So to me, this is a huge distraction. As I said beforehand, I don't agree with the violence that's around it, but you have to look at the why. And for me, the media jumping around and talking about, oh, properties are being this, things are being burnt down. Yes, they are, but why? So how about maybe quelling the problem? Then you wouldn't have anybody on the streets protesting. So how about looking at why they're protesting, as opposed to that, the reaction, back to the reaction. It's always, let's blame the victims, let's blame the victims. No, let's blame the perpetrators, let's blame the oppressors, let's blame the problem. You know, at the end of the day, you go to the doctors and they will say, well, you know what, the underlying problem is this, so it's pointless me giving you this medication because that's just going to mask the symptoms. But you need to treat the cause, you need to treat the disease, and the disease is color hatred. So that's what we should be doing. If the police forces and the governments and the people in influence and power came out and said some, I'm quite sure potentially if they had said these guys have been arrested and have been sacked and they will be going to trial, would we have the protests? Maybe, maybe not. But that never happens. What we hear is, oh, they've been put onto desk job duties. Are you kidding me? That brings anger. So find out what the disease is, treat the disease and not the symptoms. Because to me, this is a reaction to what has happened. So yes, I hear what that question is, but for me, I think that's way ahead of what we need to be solving. That to me is not the issue. It is an issue, but that's not the main issue. We need to treat the disease, and the disease is we are killing innocent people because they are Black. Let's stop that, and then let's see if we have protests, and then we can have that discussion.
Right. Well, thank you so much. There are more questions, and I would love to, we could just keep going for another hour on this, I'm sure.
Sorry.
But no, it's been great. But thank you so much. And hopefully some people will reach out to you as well outside of this, and continue this, because it's an important conversation that really needs to happen. So
yeah, I hope I've answered the questions okay, and I hope you, as I said, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have the conversation, or come back if you do another one. But thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Our next performer is also a very talented young person. We had the pleasure of speaking with her earlier. Shravya Nandiala is also a computer science student at Carnegie Mellon University. She'll be performing a cover of Strange Land by Nikki. So please, let's welcome Shravya Nandiala.
Hi, thank you so much again for having me. So
I hope I didn't butcher your name again.
Oh no, it was totally fine. It's Shravya, so you got it. Like it was mentioned, I'm going to be performing a cover by Nikki of Strangeland, and I chose this song partially because Nikki is a pretty influential artist in my life. It was one of the first times I'd seen Asian representation in music, and someone that kind of came from a similar place as my parents, and was bringing that influence to America. And I think it's so important to find people that we look up to. So I think that's important, the conversation we're having today, like finding good Black role models, and there are so many, and highlighting them and making sure that it's known that, you know, race isn't a factor in your self-worth, and like making sure that's known. So I think it's so important to highlight people who are succeeding and show that the youth that that's possible. So that's kind of why I chose the song. And I think Strangeland is an apt name because we are living in a strange time, but as we keep learning and growing, it's amazing. So thank you. Here for the nose dive, whatever you need. And I'm saving all the bold lines, I'll say them while you sleep. You're sleeping on the wrong side, and I'm turning endlessly. Screaming for my lifeline, lifeline, light. In a strange land with no plans, surrounded by doors, I can't find myself anymore. Foreign people, but you're my tempo. I want things like they were before. Ooh, continental drifter. Still, I'm the hero of my hometown. Now I'm all laid up with you, sentimental trickster. Maybe in another lifetime, lifetime light. Oh. If your love was simple, a spiritual crystal, and my life was limbo, I'll wait for tomorrow. Ooh, continental drifter. Still, I'm the hero of my hometown. Now I'm all laid up with you, sentimental trickster. Maybe in another lifetime, lifetime light. Oh, maybe in another lifetime, lifetime light. Here for the nose dive, whatever you need. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was great. And amazing voice, as I said last time. Just wonderful. Thank you so very much for coming here and helping us and supporting us. I was actually just wondering if, Nicole, if we might be able to bring you back for just one last question. I think there's a question here that the audience will like you to answer. Will it be okay?
Yep, fine.
All right, fantastic. I'm just going to go ahead and really quick read the questions and we will be moving on as we are already running late. So the question is, women are the seeds of every family. How much load is put on Black mothers and wives to help define the future of the Black youth?
Huge amounts. You know, just not even just wives, grandparents. I mean, I'm a grandparent. I have 3 grandsons. I have 3 Black men in the making. And all of what's going on now I look at them and sometimes I sort of burst out crying because I'm like, my eldest grandson is going to be 4 soon. And I know that in 6 years' time, he's going to be very aware that he's Black. And we're going to have to start having those conversations. And that saddens me. And that's what keeps me going in this space, because as a grandmother, as a mother, my eldest son's 27. I worry about him. I worry about his children, and I worry about my husband. So in answer to your question, how do you educate now? How do you keep them safe? Because as parents, you want to be that protector, but we don't have a system that's designed to protect us. So we can only go so far. So you have to give them strength. You have to start building their armor. At the moment, I don't have to do that with my grandchildren. They're still talking about Peppa Pig and Paw Patrol. That's their world at the moment. But soon, you know, and I do think about what will I say to them? And what I think I will have to do is what my mum did with me and taught me my history and taught me pre-colonial history, taught me colonial history, and just made me to be as strong as I can be and to be as vocal and to show up. We're not just saying to Caucasian people to show up, we're saying we should all show up. And I said at a conversation I had recently that with the global magnifying glass that's happening, lots of Black people didn't know their history either and didn't know half of the things which are now we've all got privy to because of social media, like, you know, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. We're all learning together, and that's where the mental health is probably going downhill, because it's shocking some of the things that some people didn't know. I didn't know everything either. How can we know everything? So it is that education piece. So it's humanity and it's education, and to know yourself and almost do unto others as you want done unto yourself. If you don't want injustice, then why would you want anyone else to have it? And that goes to everybody. So it's that piece that we have, that I think as Black women who are the anchor and the core of their families, they have to hold that. But then we also have to realize who's holding us, you know? It is difficult. It is very, very difficult. And it's something I think about every single day, having 3 Black boys growing up, and how do I foster that? How do I make them into proper human beings and to be respected outside in the world, you know? So yes, I don't know if I've answered the question, but it is a marathon of a task, and it's a task that I think many of us recognize.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's a guest in our audience, Sherry Brown, who made a very good comment in response to what you were saying, and I'd like to bring her in to say it, if
Of
that's
course.
Yes.
Hi,
Well,
Sherry.
hi, how are you, Nicole? I really enjoyed this chat and the entertainment, etc. Thank you, Tariq, and your team for bringing forth this conversation.
Yeah.
I share your comment, Nicole. As a Black mother, and on top of it, a single Black mother, it has been extremely challenging raising a young Black man in America, especially in the community where I live. I have raised him in a way where I focused on putting him in an environment that will foster his leadership and development, and really teach him self-awareness, so that he knows who he is as a young man and then as a Black man growing up. And I started that when he was very young. I used to be a teacher, so there was a lot of classroom teaching that I applied in raising him and what I would teach my students, and I really brought it home for him. And I will say, Black young men, they do experience life differently, regardless of what type of environment you try to raise them in. And I raised them in a middle class environment. But when they get to a certain age, they start recognizing certain things. And that's when Black mothers and brown mothers have to shift it into a whole nother gear. And for me, that shift was centering my son around Black role models through the fraternities in my community, Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. I'm in a sorority, Delta Sigma Theta sorority. And I knew that I needed to put him in a environment where he could see the positive role models, and they really embraced him. And I just really made sure I was building a village around him of strong Black men who could teach him beyond what I as a mom could. And I think if more Black and brown moms could just really find a way to go into a network of strength for their Black male and brown male kids, to see others that look like them who are successful, I think they do kind of have a better chance, if you will, succeeding through all this turmoil that we go through. But never, even with all that, as you were saying, Nicole, I still don't sleep at night. My son is away in school. I just dropped him off a couple of weeks ago, and I let him take his car to school. And, you know, every day we talk and we text, because, and I'm putting a camera in his car, because it's like, they're never going to see that he's an engineering major. They're never going to see he's an honor student. They're never going to see he's a campus leader. They don't know who his mom is in her community. They don't know all that. When they see him, they're going to see this Black man. And that's the part that really bothers me. It's the color hatred, as you said, that we have to grapple with when we're dealing with this society and how we're perceived. It's the Black skin. And that's what people see first. And when they see that first, perceptions already start being evoked and then acted upon, you know. So I just share that as my experience, that it's really tough. It's not easy. And
it isn't. I mean, and on the back of that, when my sons were going to secondary school, the school that they were going to wasn't the greatest in the area, but I chose it for one reason and one reason only. The headmaster, the head teacher was Black. And that was the only reason why I chose it, because I thought they will have a fighting chance if they see that Black role model. Because, you know, statistics show that if you have more diverse leadership, you get better out of your staff, out of your team, out of the children. So it's important for me to see people who look like me. And another post I put up, it was a picture of a blonde child looking for a doll, and all the dolls were Black. And that's our story. You know, we don't see people who look like us. So what we have to do is listen to the media transfer of our communities, because we don't have that access that I spoke about. So people are speaking on our behalf, but not speaking to us as a nation and as a people, as a community. So like you say, it takes a village to raise a child. So we have to have that armor of people to say, we're not all criminals, we're not all gangsters, we're not drug dealers, we are effective achievers. We are brilliant. And to have to almost, you know, other communities think that we have a chip on our shoulder, but they don't understand the lessons that we have to teach our children from so young, to have that strength, to have to just carry on. It's hard.
Yes. And my son actually is attending a historically Black university, an HBCU, is what we call them here in the States. And it's been the best experience he could ever have, especially at this time and in our country. But,
good. Yes. Well done, you. Well done, honestly. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I welcome you to connect. I think that would be great if you guys could connect after this and continue this. It's a great conversation. Thanks. So, you know, and as we've been talking and as Nicole was talking about ways we can change and the need to get to the reasons behind the actions that are happening, and not just look at what's happening, but look at why. I'm really excited to tell you that today is a very special day for a program that addresses the issue of racial wealth inequality and will significantly impact Black communities. So I am very honored to bring to the table Tariq Hussain, CEO of Burvan, to talk to us about the Burvan Black Momentum Program. If you have questions for Tariq while he's speaking, again, please enter them in the chat window and we'll address them if we have time. So please welcome Tariq Hussain.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Kim and Rich, once again, great job for organizing. Really appreciate you guys doing a great job. Great program so far. The artists have been all great, and it was an amazing input from our guest, Nicole. That was a very good, valuable discussion that I think it's important. And my job here, I guess, is to introduce our Black Momentum program, which is basically designed around the concept of racial wealth inequality. This is something that comes up as part of this conversation. It's a difficult conversation to have in general. But you know, we're finding here that there's many issues underlying what's happening in our communities. The big issue that we're confronted right now is this concept of state action, police action against a particular minority community. And that's one issue, and that's a big issue. I think that another issue that comes near it is the racial wealth inequality, which we're also seeing. And some people will say, well, it's because, you know, there's Black people tend to be in more poor communities and tend to have more interaction with police. So there's a lot, so that's why there's, you know, more of those kind of incidents happening. There's a lot of things wrong with that sentiment and with that statement, because even if the, you know, even if the people from, if Black people are not coming from a Black community, it doesn't mean that their interactions with the police or interactions with society in general are free of any kind of racial, I guess, animus. And so we know that's not true, but that is one factor that does exist, and racial wealth inequality is a very obvious and major factor in how the relations work here. And from our point of view, entrepreneurship is all about bringing forth the best and brightest ideas. And when we limit the ideas to come forward, we limit one particular group from having access to bringing those ideas to fruition. We as a society are losing out. It's not just the entrepreneurs themselves that are losing out, but we as a society are losing out on the great ideas that could have come and impacted our lives. So ideas, inventions, and entrepreneurs, their job is to make people's lives better through a product, an invention, a service, or something like that. And so by having this limited input into that field, we're losing out. So the goal of the Bergman Momentum Program is to create an opportunity for entrepreneurs in the Black community to have to come forward with their ideas and to find that initial seed funding that is very difficult to find. If you know the history of entrepreneurship, well, the history of race inequality in this country in general, the Black experience has been one that is been intentionally kept away through policy decisions from being able to build wealth over a period of time. The biggest source of wealth has been wealth that came from the appreciation of land values. We saw in the 1800s, whenever there was an opportunity to buy land, Black people were kept away from it. Obviously, initially after slavery, the land that was promised to freed slaves was not, that promise obviously did not happen. And so there was no land ownership, which continued to appreciate in value through those over the last 200 years. You see this in the 20th century. After World War I, we see this post-World War II, where there was many opportunities to buy homes that were granted to white people through government action, plans and programs like, that would allow people to buy property with no down payments, or allow people to buy property with, the GI Bill allows that for former veterans of war, but Black war veterans were not included in that plan. Other plans specifically excluded Black people. And so while other people were able to buy land, and that land accumulated in wealth over the next 50, 60 years, it created family wealth for those families. And of course, Black people were unable to build that wealth because land ownership was just never there. And we see that in entrepreneurship, especially in entrepreneurship the last 30 years or so, it's all about an idea that begins and is seeded through family wealth. So that first initial capital that comes into the company comes in from friends and family, right? It's easier when your friends and family have the ability to write you that check for $50,000 or $100,000. Obviously, that becomes very difficult when you don't have that kind of access. Your family doesn't have that kind of family wealth. And when we're talking about a wealth disparity, we're talking about a 10-to-1 wealth disparity. So I think the last study that was done in 2016, the average family wealth for a white family in the US was $171,000. The average family wealth for a Black family in the United States was $17,000. So it's a very direct 10-to-1 ratio on family wealth. And then the disparity is higher, much higher in certain areas, especially certain larger cities. So take a city like Boston, where the average family wealth of a white family is something in 250,000, whereas the average Black family, the wealth is $6. So literally $6, and this is due obviously to a lot of debt and those kind of things. So our objective here was to bring forth those Black entrepreneurs that have ideas that are good ideas, and you have entrepreneurs who are committed to their ideas and to making them successful, to be able to provide them that initial seed funding, which is $150,000 in seed funding. But in addition to that, provide access to coaches and network and mentors to allow the entrepreneur to build their networks, to further develop their ideas, and to then bring those ideas to market. And so the program runs, and obviously the Tulsa was mentioned earlier, and I think I drew a lot of inspiration from that. As you all know, the story of Tulsa, which is also known as the Black Wall Street, which was an area that was developed by two Black entrepreneurs in the early 1900s. And they granted other Black entrepreneurs to come in to build shops, to build businesses there. And over the course, I think it was less than 10 years maybe, that this thing became a thriving, economically thriving area. Had several high value businesses, movie theaters. There was all kinds of businesses and shops. And in this area of Tulsa, the Greenwood area, was actually targeted by the Ku Klux Klan, which was aided by the police at that time, to come in and literally create a riot that would lead to the burning down. And it was a very premeditated riot in the sense that they even had like planes coming in and dropping bombs and whatever, and sort of bombarded the whole area, which led to destruction of all the businesses, which never recovered. The two founding entrepreneurs, they were gone, they never recovered. And it was just complete destruction of an area that was thriving economically. And so that's another example of an idea where if Black people thrive economically, it doesn't mean that they're free from racial animus, but it does give an example of how we can create communities to become economically more successful. One of the other features of it obviously was indirectly, Greenwood was helped by the Jim Crow laws of the time, because Jim Crow laws prohibited Black people from accessing other types of businesses that are owned by white people, so they were forced to interact amongst themselves. This allowed to create a greater economic impact on their communities, keeping the money inside. But the idea here obviously is to help entrepreneurs bring forth their ideas and create through businesses that have a product that's going to be successful or viable, or a service, also to create products and services that are going to have a greater social impact that would help others in the communities or help other entrepreneurs. And at Bourbon Capital, what we've done over the last few years is establish ourselves as a very premier global networking ecosystem. And to provide access to our ecosystem to entrepreneurs is a valuable action. It's a valuable it's very valuable to most entrepreneurs. So now an entrepreneur who comes in through our program will have access to seed funding, will have access to networks, will have access to coaches and mentors, and will also have access to various other investors all over the world. We'll have more of a feel for what the global investing environment is like. And so like when they go on to their next round, the round A of funding, if the business is growing, they actually have access to even a greater investor network, which is what we want to provide. And then the beauty of the program is as the companies that are successful that come out of it, the foundation, Bourbon Foundation, is going to own a percentage of that company. So if the company is successful, that percentage goes back into the foundation, and then that money is used to fund the next cohort of entrepreneurs. So in a way, it's a paid forward program. So as companies are successful, they're paying it forward and bringing on new entrepreneurs and giving more opportunity there. So that's the idea behind it. And I'm definitely welcome to any questions anyone may have. One of the things I also want to mention is that tomorrow, applications go live. So we're open to applications from entrepreneurs beginning tomorrow. And the way that our schedule works for this, we hope to begin the program in January 2021. And the program would end on June 1st, 2021, which would be our demo day, where the entrepreneurs who came out of it can actually demo their products and services to investors. That demo day would fall on the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa Massacre, which was June 1st, 1921. And I think that's something that kind of fell into place. And I think it's something that's very apropos of what we're trying to accomplish.
Great, thank you. So there's one comment that I'd just like to read the comment, because for anyone who is watching that doesn't have access to the chat here. This is by Sherry, who we heard speaking earlier. She says that economic empowerment of marginalized people is the focus of her company, where they help to realize financial prosperity using education on wealth building strategies, especially in real estate and primary wealth building tool. or as a primary wealth building tool. She says she shares your belief that a true key to recreating the Black Wall Streets across America is through supporting entrepreneurships of Blacks and land ownership. When Black people win at this, we all win, just as with the civil rights accomplishments of the 1960s. Everyone benefits. She says she looks forward to applying for the program to fuel her company's growth. She's passionate about real estate investments, education, wealth strategy implementation, and the Black and Brown communities. And congratulations to Bravan on the initiative. This is what is called action. And then there is there's a question by Elan. He has a 13-year-old barbershop in downtown Miami. He's been unable to get the SBA or other relief loans because of his lack of credit, and he's wondering how he can apply for this program.
So first of all, thank you very much, Sherry. Yes, and I agree that this is action, and that's the first thing that was my thought. This is something that we've had in our minds for several years. Obviously, when the tragedy of George Floyd happened, this came to the forefront. We said, look, this is the time for action. Like, there's got to be like an action item. Like, what are we going to do, and what is going to bring? What is something that we can do immediately? That's an action that's going to bring some kind of empowerment, whether it's a political, social empowerment, or it's an economic empowerment. Obviously, our field, not so much the social and political side, it's more the economic side. And so this is immediately this is an action item. Like, this is something you can literally do right now, and it would have an impact. And that's basically our thought process behind it. In general, I feel like being action oriented is the way that we kind of have to be with these kind of when these kind of situations happen. And if you want to see change, action oriented is the way to be. So I appreciate that. Thank you for acknowledging that, and we look forward to your application as well. So one of the things is the issue of credit is an important thing that comes up a lot for entrepreneurs who are starting up, especially entrepreneurs that are coming from a poor background, entrepreneurs who are trying to recover. This is something that happens a lot. So our criteria is not credit is not one of our criteria for selecting people into our cohort. But rather the criteria is more of what is the problem that your business is trying to solve, and what is your business bringing to the market that's new and interesting, or that's is a better model for an existing product or service. So we're kind of looking for that, and we're looking for how driven the entrepreneurs are. How driven are you? How committed are you to growth, and what kind of growth you're looking for? So that's kind of what we're looking for in the applications. We're not looking for do you have perfect credit or not, but the whole thing is being balanced all together. What is the idea, what is the product, how committed the entrepreneur is, and really the commitment of the entrepreneur is actually one of the most important things to me, because this again is not a for-profit. This is not a for-profit thing. We're not trying to sit here and become a for-profit accelerator that puts out companies and takes ownership in them, and then we make money off it. Rather, this is a nonprofit. This is under the foundation, and the idea is that a lot of entrepreneurs may not be successful in their first business, but going through our program, they may take the seed money and they'll get the coaching, the networks, the mentorship and all that stuff, and that would help develop them as entrepreneurs. And though that particular business may fail, they may then go on and start a second or third business, which would then be successful. And so our goal is in developing the entrepreneurs. It's not in the focusing on the business itself, but in developing the entrepreneurs who are committed and who are driven. So that's one of the things that we also take into account, how driven and how committed the entrepreneurs are to their business and to what they're doing. So that's what I would say to that. So I encourage everyone to apply, to go through the application process, and we'll see where it goes.
Great, thank you. And so for the applications, you said it opens tomorrow?
Yes.
And so people can find the information for applying on the website, I believe?
Yes, it'll be on the Burban website, burban.com, and the applications will be live, and you can go through it. Most of the stuff is done online, but you have to have some documents and stuff you can upload, but it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And
thank you, Kim.
Great, and congratulations on the programs getting to this stage. We're so excited to see how it's going to move forward from here.
Good, Tariq.
Thank you, Rich. Great job.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We did go a little bit over time, but I think it was definitely worth it for the conversations that we have. If you would like to support the empowerment of Black entrepreneurs and you are able, please consider making a donation to the Bervan Black Momentum program. We still need many donors and sponsors to bring this program to as many people as possible. We hope you've enjoyed the discussion and what we've been talking about, and we hope that what we've been talking about here today will spark many more discussions as we move forward toward a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.